Hello and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we're here with Stefan Glazer. So, Stefan, how do you deal when the shit gets real? Or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Stefan Glazer. I'm an author. I'm a podcast host. I'm a photographer. I do a little bit of everything. I tend to do that because I have a little thing called ADHD, and I kind of harness that into everything that I do. Um, you know, when it really comes down to it, I try to find the things that really fire me up, that like fill my cup, that inspire me to actually be creative or expressive. So that's me in a real nutshell.
I mean, so you're a jack of the creative trades, which I personally love.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think that really sums it up pretty well. I don't like things that are really, I'm not going to say analytical, because I do like stats and things like that. So, but I find creativity and stuff in that. But I just don't like things that bore me. And most things that bore me are things that, are kind of just out of the creative wheelhouse.
I feel like that's kind of a common trend for creative people because I myself am a creative person and I'm always doing way more than I need to do. Like you said, podcasting, writing. I'm trying to learn how to draw. I play ukulele. Like my husband's like, so what are we learning this week?
Yeah, I definitely have learned, like, I finally have narrowed it down in life. I think that was the hard thing, is I would fixate on so many different things, and I still have my outlets. Like painting is still an outlet, drawing and doodling. That's still like a nice little, like, it's almost like a meditative practice for me. But then, music, people are like, "Oh, you play instruments?" I'm like, "Yeah, I play the drums, I play guitar, I play bass, I know a little bit of piano, like I know a little bit of everything." They're like, "Great, do you have like a band? Did you publish anything?" I'm like, "No, no, I do it for me. I don't do it for people. It's just me."
Well, that makes me feel better because randomly, I think I even told Connie this or somebody this on episodes a couple times ago that I was like, randomly, I have the urge to learn how to play the drums. Like, just couldn't even tell you why, but just like, I'm going to learn to play the drums, which is not a cheap thing to just all of a sudden be like, I'm going to just do this. So
That's funny because I've seen a couple of people online being like, I've learned how to play the drums.
it's going around, I guess.
What's funny about like how I even learned how to play the drums, it was out of necessity when I was in college, is because I met somebody in an art school that I went to that no longer exists, which is funny in itself, just as a tangent. But I was like, "Hey, yeah, I play guitar." He's like, "Oh, cool, me too." But you know, do you know how to play the drums? I'm like, "No." He's like, "Do you want to try?" And I said, "Well, sure." And we started a weird death metal band.
Oh my God, I love it.
A spontaneous death metal band. I love it.
It really was. We got to play we did play two shows. And we opened for Morbid Angel, which was because we were in Tampa at the time, and they're a local band to Tampa. And it was so strange just because like everyone was really into it. Like everyone in the band had all the corpse paint on, but I've never been that type of person. So I had like khaki, like cargo shorts and like a polo on, and I was behind the drum kit, and everyone was kind of like, I don't understand that guy. What's that guy doing?
Where did the nerd come from?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Basically, I'm a 6'5", 280-pound nerd.
I love it.
Behind a drum kit in a polo and some khaki shorts.
Okay, so you're not doing the Travis Barker with the no shirt and tattoos up to your neck. Got it.
No tattoos. Back then, I was pretty clean shaven too. It was pretty strange time.
So you looked really clean cut in a band filled with not.
Yeah, very not clean cut. Everyone corpse paint and just spikes.
I hope there's a picture of that somewhere.
There has to be. I feel like there should be. There should be I mean, this would have been 2000. So it would have, there should be something, but I honestly, I don't know.
All right. Listeners, find this picture for us. Anyway, before we go off on more tangents, not that this has not been lovely, you briefly mentioned in your pre-interview that you were homeless. So how did you end up homeless and then go from that to being a successful person both in business and personal life?
You know, I didn't realize that being homeless was a trauma until in the last 2 years of my life going through a lot of therapy because I would always play it off.
Like, oh, I was just homeless, no big deal.
Exactly. That's literally how I would do it because people would go, you know, oh, what did you do while you're in Florida? I was like, you know, I talk about Florida as a prison sentence. I was like, oh, I did 9 years in Florida. I almost did a full 10 years there. And people would laugh. I'm like, yeah, you know, I went to college and I lived in my car for 9 months and then I couch surfed for about 2 years and just gloss over that whole thing because people hear that and they're like, wait, you lived in your car. How did that happen? And I would avoid that like the plague.
So you're doing the Kevin Hart. Well, Kevin Hart was saying to you, whoa, you can't just speak past that. Like you just said what you just said to the other person. And you're like, what?
Yeah. But like, what? You know, and then I did other things. And they're like, no, go back to the car thing. Like, what happened there?
Back up. Hold on.
And really, it was a combination of just bad circumstances and bad decisions. And people at face value will hear, well, you lived in your car for 9 months. That's insane. It is, but it's not like how other people picture somebody being homeless. First of all, if you're going to be homeless in the Tampa Bay area. You can go hang out at the beach and like you get free showers and it's kind of nice. Which I will still make light of it and I still joke about it. But what had happened was I had graduated with my degree in graphic design and I couldn't find a job in that field. However, I did have a decent job working for AOL at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Yeah. This was literally, and people go, well, you worked for AOL. I'm like, yeah, you know, literally the AOL. We were
just make the annoying buzzing noise and they'll know what you're talking about.
And well, I would laugh constantly at trying to explain like this was a big 1,500 seat call center that I started as a phone rep there, which selling AOL to people was horrible. But I only did that for about a month or two. And then I got into their IT department, which was fun. So it was a decent job. And then through circumstances with the person I was living with, they decided to sell their house without telling me.
Oh, fun.
Oh my God.
And then I was like, well, this wouldn't be a problem because I have a decent job, but my car had just died. So I just paid cash because I had no idea how to really manage my money at, you know, well, I was like 23 at the time. I didn't know how.
Skill that they should be teaching in schools more.
Oh yeah, definitely. That money management is so important, and understanding that I don't have to pay the entire balance. Like I could have gotten financing, even though I had student loans and there was not great credit. I could have still gotten financing on a car instead of saying, well, I have to take all the money out of the bank and buy a car. So I did that. And it was like the perfect storm. So I had the car, which was great. I had a car now. This is fantastic. And then I had no home. And I was like, okay, well, I have this job, so I can just put things in the storage and find an apartment. It'll only take like, in my mind, like a couple weeks. I'll figure this out. And that turned into 9 months. And when I thought it was over, it really wasn't, because luckily a friend that I was working with, one of the managers there, heard me talking about it during a lunch break. And he was like, so did I just hear that you're living out of your car? I'm like, yeah. Whenever I drive down to St. Pete and I go underneath the overpass over by Central Avenue. And he's like, hold on. What are you talking about? You work here. Like, how do you not have an apartment? I was like, just bad And I just kind of just went with it. It was just bad circumstances. And just, he's like, no, you're coming home with me. Like, I have an extra room, you know, it's.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah. I stayed with him and his girlfriend, who became his wife later on, for about 18 months, which was a lot longer than she wanted me to be there. And I totally understand. And I love them to death. And I mean, I'm the godfather of one of their children. Like, so I'm still friends with them. But we would joke about that later on. Like, yeah, she despised having two toddlers, basically, because that's what happened when me and him got together. It was just, we were just, it was like having two little kids in the house constantly.
When you have two adult men in any house, that is the eventuality.
Yes. I had this odd feeling when I was couch surfing, as I call it. I thought, well, I'll figure this out. But I never put a plan in action. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't even happen over the following years. I still bounced around from job to job. And I didn't really get my bearing straight until I was well in my 30s. And I had moved, I would say in 10 years' time, I moved from being homeless to being on the couch to apartment to a whole bunch of apartments. I can't even keep track of it because you ever get those things that say, oh, could you verify the address that you used to live at? And then it gives you a list of addresses and you're like, oh no, I don't remember. Like, I think I lived at some of these places because I've lived in so many different addresses in my lifetime. And I just don't remember them. And I thought it was just a normal thing in life. So I kept going on, bouncing around until I had met, I can't even say it, when I met my now wife. I've been friends with my wife since high school. We decided to start dating about 13, 14 years ago. And then all of a sudden, we kind of got on track. And I kind of had a mental, like a purpose, okay, this is where I'm going. She's climbing the corporate ladder. I'm climbing the corporate ladder. This is an interesting thing. Like, I'm figuring out what I want to do with life, and I'm figuring out where I'm going. I couldn't, for the life of me, understand why I just didn't reach out to help from my family. Actually, I take that back. I understand why now, because it was a big problem with shame. I didn't want to say hey guys, I'm living out of my car, because I was supposed to be like the golden child, the smart, the nerd, the guy who everyone goes to for all the help, because I'm the one who can fix things. I understand things. And I didn't want to go to them and say hey, I failed, because that's what it felt like.
I'm glad you went there, because I was gonna ask him, was your family not willing to help you? You made your choice, you got to figure it out. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is it took a lot of therapy and a lot of talking about it, and especially being open and honest about it. Is, even though they had these expectations of me because I was the golden child, all my brothers are high school dropouts. My parents, they work really hard, but my mom had this business all her life, and then it just kind of fell apart. And I was I had these examples in life where I'm like, man, I have to do this, because if I don't do this, then I'm just continuing the trend of not getting through, of failing, of doing all this stuff. So there was a lot of shame associated with even talking about it to them. So when I finally did talk to him about it, which was a few years ago, like really sat down and said like, oh yeah, this is what happened. It was a lot of revelations for them because they had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, it was also like very cathartic to say like, yeah, I went through some shit and it was harder than I thought it was going to be. And I was afraid to reach out because I was afraid that everyone would be like ashamed of me that I couldn't do it.
Man, that shame of disappointment is real.
Yeah, it is.
Ugh. I think everybody will relate to that because having to make any sort of call to your parents or just anybody that you feel believes in you
Yeah.
is hard. But you kind of mentioned it. You got to swallow your pride sometimes.
Yeah. I learned that later on in life that swallowing your pride and just asking for help, man, asking for help is the big one. Because I think that's what has gotten me to a place where I can talk. Well, first of all, I can talk about it with everyone, and second of all, I can actually just go and be like, yeah, I need help with this. I can't do this on my own, and or I can, but if I have your help, I can do it better. So please, like, let's do this. And
I like that. I
yeah,
can do it, but if I have your help, I can do it better. I like that.
yeah, it's like I think that's a big thing for me that I've learned. And that's not like I had this huge aha moment like 15 years ago. This is like within the last year. This has really just happened. It's not it's not been a lifelong like, oh yeah, I have this idea now. It's like, okay, I'm 42 years old now and I finally am comfortable with asking for help. So it's possible.
Yeah, never too late, as they always say.
Hmm.
So did that kind of tie into your diagnosis of ADHD and generalized anxiety disorder?
Yeah. Like I said, I kind of gloss over a lot of things and I kind of make jokes of it and I kind of lose track of a lot of things over the years. I had no idea until I was 39, which it still doesn't seem like, oh yeah, I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary of being diagnosed, which is kind of it seems crazy to me, but the getting to the diagnosis was that aha moment that people always talk about. It wasn't the like for me like, oh, like the therapy and figuring out like it's okay to ask for help. Yeah, it's great, but ADHD, that diagnosis, and the generalized anxiety disorder, like those diagnoses that I got, it made me stop. It made me really look at myself and start researching because when I got the diagnosis, my brain went, yeah, ADHD. Like, I guess that's a thing. I don't
Okay,
know.
sure.
But then I go, okay, well, let's get some books. Let's find some information online. Let's look at medical journals. Like I love researching. That's part of my love. My hyper focus is learning new things. If you give me something new to learn, I will dive deep into it. So I dove deep. My wife dove deep, and then we both kind of sat up and looked at each other, and we're like, "Oh man, man! How did no one see any of these red flags?" And that was like that moment of like, wow, okay, this all makes sense now. And I didn't have that, well, great, I wasted 39 years of my life struggling.
Hmm.
I had that feeling and that thought of going, I get to live my life now. I get to really turn this around and go in the direction I need to go. And I think that was really, really important for me.
Yeah. And it's so different from like what like happened to me. Like I've had anxiety since I was a kid, but it never was like officially told to me until I became an adult and went to therapy. And she was like, "Yeah, you've got anxiety." And it's like, for me, that was a moment of like, oh, thank God, I finally know for sure that this is what has been going on, and I'm not just like, well, maybe it's this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what's very telling too is people would always ask me, "Well, how come you act so strange when you go into these like big social situations, or when we're in crowded places, or if you're doing these things, or if you have to go and do something where you have to like which it's hilarious how the phone gives me such anxiety. I hate talking on the phone, which is, like I said, it's hilarious for a podcast host. But
I mean, this is not the phone. In
yeah,
all
exactly.
fairness,
No, it's not.
It's just FaceTime.
Yeah. But if I see a number come through on this rectangle of doom, I instantly, I can look at my heart monitor and go, oh, cool. It's up it's like 100 beats a minute. Why? I was like, because somebody's calling me.
Mm-hmm.
And then if somebody says, well, why don't you give that place a call real quick? I just look at them and sweat starts coming down my brow. I'm like, I am not calling anyone. I can't. And I thought that was just a normal feeling. And I did a lot of work in call centers over the years.
maybe that's why.
I definitely think that's a huge factor into my aversion to phones in general.
Especially because call centers suck.
Oh,
Did it one time, and it was only for like not even a week. And I was like, you need to hire people. This is not my job.
Yeah. Call center work, it was very anxiety inducing, and it's very overwhelming. I've done a few different types of call center work, but I remember specifically there were times in my life where I knew it was enough. And my last call center job, I worked for an insurance company. For Blue Cross Blue Shield. And
oh God, one of the worst ones.
Yeah, and I always try to explain people. They're like, well, how bad could it be? I'm like, well, think about it. Your schedule when you work in a call center is very, very rigid, which I hate. Like, he's like, okay, you can't deviate. You can't be off the phones for this amount of time. And it's a nightmare for anyone with ADHD because you lose time. It doesn't take much to lose time. It'll just happen. But what drove me and gave me severe anxiety attacks and severe depression, talking to people with the issues that they have, sometimes were terrifying. To hear that a family member passed away and we were denying a claim, and that would just take a toll on me mentally. And then you would log on and you would see that there's 80 calls in queue, and you're like, I can't. There's 80 people that have been waiting for an hour already, and they're just there, and I'm going to be talking for 8 to 10 hours today, and it's bringing up old anxiety. I can feel that feeling of like looking at the phone in that red light.
See, just that explanation right there totally makes sense to me, and I'm not even a therapist, of why you would hate talking on the phone then. Like,
yeah. So there's a little insight into that.
See, and I'm usually the one. Oh, sorry, Connie.
Oh no, you can go ahead, Rita. It's fine.
I was just gonna say I'm usually the one on the other side because I work for a company where I have to call the insurance. But because I'm from the provider side, I'm just usually like, will you just reprocess this, please? Thank you. Cool. All right, bye.
Yeah, those were always calls that I would love to get.
Oh, okay, cool. Anyway, Connie, go for it.
Oh, we always have we have a queue too, but it's emails basically. It's dealing with quotes, so it's it's not as bad. And I have basically a full hour to do one quote. So I'm like, oh, that's plenty of time. But it still gives me anxiety though when we have a lot of them. And I have coworkers that are slow as fuck. And I'm like, you have been on. One time we were super busy. There was a ton in the queue to do. And this one woman was working for over like half a day on one request. I was like, that if it is that big of a request, there are other things that we can do to speed up the process. You should be doing that. How is this taking you half of your day?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite jobs that stemmed from a call center job was I was doing online correspondence, which I gamified, and I ended up getting everyone in the department fired because I was doing it too good.
Whoops.
And
how does that happen? You need to explain. I need more detail. How did you make it a game?
I basically, my boss was really cool about this because he goes, hey, if you can get your quota for answering email, because when you hear what the online correspondence was for, you're going to be like, wait, what? It was for Sprint long distance. And I'm not saying that this was like, in the 90s online this was like 2009. So there were still people out there that had long distance on their phone. Like, and they would
Are we talking, I'm assuming we're not talking like wall phone, we're talking cell phone.
No, we are definitely talking landlines.
Okay. Okay, for everybody that's listening that is not a millennial or older, there used to be phones plugged into the wall that we all talked on. That's what he's talking about.
And you could get charged long distance calls if they were not in your immediate area.
Yeah.
With your same zip code.
Okay, continue now.
So to gamify it, he goes, if you can answer, like, we had certain basically quotas and stats that we had to hit. He's like, if you could do this, you could just, fuck off for the rest of the day. And I was like, well, I like fucking off, so I'm going to figure out how to do it.
Say less.
Yeah. So I basically saw that the need of these emails, there was like maybe 6 different types of emails. And I was like, I'm going to make a whole bunch of canned documents. So I took like half a day and wrote out really well thought out and good emails to help people reset their password, to help people do these things.
The automated email is what you were working on.
Macros. We call them macros.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But it was before we, they didn't have a macro way to do it. So literally just open up the Word document,
copy, paste.
And what ended up happening was everyone, like, I think the average was like 10 emails a day, or it was some really weird thing. And I had gone in and my average was like 87. And everyone was like, whoa, you're doing this way too fast. And I was like, yeah, but I have 100% accuracy and 100% satisfaction, and you guys don't. And everyone was...
That's hilarious.
Everyone got so mad. And then my boss was just like, I'm just going to get rid of them. And then me and you are going to run this department. And we would just bang out all the emails by like 8:39. And then we would go have lunch and just like, we would literally just do nothing all day. And it was...
That's hilarious. Did you lose your job because of it too?
No, we both kind of lost our job because Sprint no longer carried long distance.
I was going to say, we know where this is going. Nobody has phones on the walls anymore, which is why we just had to explain it to people that are younger than us what they are.
But I would figure that they would still have like emails that need to be responded to. But I'm sure that that's just other departments.
Exactly. We didn't handle that. Our call center only handled Sprint long distance.
That's hilarious.
Goodbye, long distance.
I wonder if there's anybody out there still like, man, that Stefan got me fired.
Probably.
Wait, did they fully know that it was you?
Oh yeah, because everyone could see the stats.
Oh, God.
And they were so upset with them, but like my boss was so excited just because it was less work he had to do, and it was less work I had to do. So instead of milking the work, we were just milking the fun time.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome on so many levels. Oh, anyway, How about what advice can you give to somebody who gets a diagnosis like you later on in life, 30s, 40s, whatever?
Yeah, I tell this to a lot of people. Going and getting a diagnosis is important. Self-diagnosis was also very important because you can do that. You can take a self-assessment, and that's when light bulbs start going off. Um, but when you do get that inkling, or you actually get a clinical diagnosis, like, it is imperative to learn about it. I tell people that all the time, that you're not your diagnosis, but learn about what it actually is.
Absolutely.
It's kind of important because you can't just like go, oh, cool, I'm that, and all right, whatever. I'm just going to continue doing the hardest things ever, instead of finding the way that you can actually work with your brain and
Yeah.
not against
Unless they
it.
run into somebody that's like, oh, what's that? And then they're like,
Yeah. Like, I don't know. That's what the doctor told me. It's like, and you didn't follow up at all. You didn't ask any questions. Yeah.
I have to say that would be my husband for sure, 100%. Like, his mom is going to be having heart surgery, and we're going to go down and take care of her. And I'm like, so what does your mother have? Like, what are they doing? It's minor heart surgery. I'm curious. I've never heard of a minor heart surgery, just fucking heart surgery. And he's like, And I'm
Like,
like, I know she told you detail. What? I don't know. You have to. I know that they're not going to open up her chest cavity. That's why it's minor.
ay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
well, I tell a lot of people this too, especially with those that do have ADHD. When you are dealing with things like that, because I'm very guilty of this. I bring notepads and little notebooks with me everywhere, because writing a note in my phone with my fingers doesn't work. I need to physically write it. So if I go to a doctor's appointment, like with, say, my parents, because they're just old as shit. So like, if I go with them, like, and they go, oh yeah, well, my dad has a whole bunch of stuff wrong with him. My mom has a whole bunch of stuff wrong with her. And even like right now, I'm gearing up. Saturday morning, I'm going to be driving across country to take care of my uncle, who has a myriad of things wrong with him. I know what they have wrong with him because I have it all in my my notebook. Because if I don't, I'd be like, they're old and they're going in the hospital.
And they're dying.
Yeah.
Slowly.
Or fast.
Getting,
I don't know.
Yeah, they're getting there either way. They need help.
Yeah, but like, thankfully, I've understood, like, my brain's not going to retain the information. It's part of like the severe inattentive ADHD. My working memory is complete shit, and I am fine with that. I accept that now. I don't beat myself up anymore that somebody will be like, oh yeah, just go down the street and turn right. And then I look at it and I'm like, what? Do what? And there's like, I just said, go down the street and turn right. I'm like, could you just write this down? Like, it's just two. I was like, yeah, it's two steps to instructions that I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. And they're like, that's frustrating. I'm like, yeah, you have no idea what it's like being inside my head.
Yeah, frustrating for you? You mean for me?
Yes. Actually, it's funny because, like, list-wise, I started doing more lists because of kids. Because kids and a mother's memory, once they have a child, their brain is completely rewired for motherhood. So you forget things all the fucking time. It's the fucking worst. So now I have to, like, write out lists. I still go to the grocery store, have something on my list, and forget it. And have to go back the next day. I'm like, what the fuck, Connie? Get it together. It was even on the list, and you still missed it and have to go back.
Yeah. I am very guilty of that with because I have my to-do lists. That it's a huge cornerstone of my life, and it's been that way even before my diagnosis. Like, I figured that out early on, that if I write it down on a to-do list in the morning, I might actually get it done, and I might remember it because I'll keep going back to that list. But there's been plenty of times where I'm like, all right, there's 10 things on this list that I'm picking up from the store, and I'll come back with 8 of them. And I'm like,
Yes.
ah, shit.
And it was
All right,
just, like,
so to
funny.
recap, y'all, write everything down and learn about your diagnosis.
Yes.
Well, and the worst part is because I have the little child that, like, I'll think of stuff and be like in the middle of helping Theo with whatever, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I should really write that down. Yep, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna remember to write that down. Never write it down. And then I'll remember later after I've already done or gone to the store or whatever, and I'll be like, fuck. I was supposed to write that down, and I'll still forget.
See, I have
I
those
will
moments
still forget.
where I always thought my mom was kidding, but it totally happens where you walk into a room with a purpose and you get into that room and you're like, why did I come in here?
Oh yeah,
And you have
and
no
we
idea
all
why
thought
you
our
went in
moms
there.
were crazy, and it's not. They're not crazy.
Well, and it happens. My husband says it happens to him too. He'll like go into a room and he's like, I don't remember why I came in here. I'm like, yep, I had that. That happened to me earlier. I don't know. Still don't know why I went in there.
Yeah, that's my life in a nutshell. Like, I will purposely come down to my office and I'll sit down at my computer and I go, ah, shit, why did I even do this? Like, what am I doing here? And I'm looking at my screens and I'm like looking at I'm like, I don't have
Is there
my
a
list.
Post-it note somewhere?
Like, if I don't literally have these Post-it notes all over my monitors, I will never remember why I am sitting at a computer. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll like play some games or watch some YouTube or something.
You're like, well, I'm down here. I'll make use of something.
Yeah. I kind of I tie that all in too, like with everything I do is so important that I remember it because of that constant. It's a constant battle of forgetting, and it's frustrating because obviously there's the forgetfulness is like at the top of the iceberg for me. It's like it's the one that everyone knows because they're like,
yeah,
yeah,
because it happens to everybody eventually at some point.
exactly. And they're just like, well, that doesn't seem like an ADHD thing. I'm like, it's the tip of the iceberg.
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's the one that drives me up a wall because if I could remember things like a perfect example is my wife is neurotypical. You tell her something and she will go off for 3 or 4 days and come back and be able to recite every single detail of that instruction that you gave her, and like she'll show the entire thing that she did, and I'm just like, how do you do that?
She made you a PowerPoint presentation on you asking why milk curdles.
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. And me, I'm
How
like,
does wine age?
yeah. Yeah, and I'll get lost in thought, and sometimes like where my brain goes, I try to explain it, and I even tried to explain in my book. I tried to explain it too, but it's really hard to explain the connections my brain makes to get to the thing I might blurt out, or the story I tell, or even just how I might remember something. And it happens all the time. But what I tell people is, don't verbally tell me if you want me to remember something. Don't verbally tell it to me. Don't do it while I'm driving because I just that's the worst time. And my wife understands now, because if she goes, oh, we should go run to that store and pick up the thing, and I'm like, please, no, I already forgot that. Could you just text that to me? Text it to me right now, because what will happen is I'll get out of the car and I'll look at my phone and go, oh yeah, we should go. Oh yeah, that's where we are. Like, it doesn't even like connect. Like, she's like, yeah, that's what I was talking about in the car. I'm like, oh, now I understand. Now I'm starting to understand.
So with your ADHD, because my husband has it too, he will start the dishes, right? And then end up like cleaning some random part of the kitchen because he was putting away a dish and he saw some X, Y, or Z. And here he is now down the rabbit hole of cleaning our stove or like something like that. And the dishes are still in the dishwasher.
Yes.
Does that happen to you?
Yes. This is a wonderful thing that I call shiny object syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's him.
It's basically, it's so strange too, because I've done a lot of work with myself, just mental gymnastics and to help ritualize and just kind of make a habit of everything I do. And there's still times where this shiny object syndrome pops up because with our brains, they're dopamine starved. So if we see something, even if it's not something that you would say, oh, that's fun, like cleaning out a junk drawer. However, that will give you more dopamine than putting away the dishes. So your brain's just going to auto switch to that task. And it will happen. And it happens every time. Like when I go to redo my office and I do it like every few months because I'm a psycho, I guess. But I'll go through and start taking everything out of drawers and putting everything, and I get to a certain point and then I'll find something. And that one thing will take me on a 4 or 5 hour tangent. And before you know it, I'm like out in the garage and I'm sweeping something, and my wife will be like, I thought you were doing your office. Like, I thought you were reorganizing. I was like, I was. But then I found this pen and I remembered, man, this pen was really cool. The last time I had it in that container that I had in the car, which wasn't in the car because I checked. And then I remembered I did this whole thing where I reorganized the garage. And so I went into the garage, but then I saw there was some stuff on the floor, and then I started sweeping it up. And
it's literally my life you're describing right now. Yeah.
And what's great and what's horrible is it's great because, you know, life is an adventure always for us. But it's horrible because all these things get started and they never get completed.
It eventually, like, or at least my husband is lucky enough that I follow him around and then complete what he would. Like, I get mad at him because I'm like, why are all the dishes always? He gets them out. He can get them on top of the counter, but get them put away? No. Yeah. So it's like, oh, you're lucky that I'm following you around and then putting the rest of the dishes away. He's like, yeah, but I did do the dishes because I took out the dishes and I put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher. See? So therefore, task complete.
See, and I'm the opposite. Where like, if I misplace my keys, I will not stop looking for my keys until I find my keys. Like, kitchen ripped apart, couch ripped apart, car ripped apart. Like, I am not going to go to sleep until I find the keys. Like, hyper focus. I have to know what happened to the keys.
What's strange for me is
they were in your pocket the whole time.
Probably.
Well, what happens a lot for me is object blindness, which is really frustrating because when it happens, like
Isn't that men, period?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big guy thing. Because
just kidding, guys, we love you.
Well, I know my wife all the time. Be like, hey, could you get that thing right there? And I look, and I'm like, and I keep doing that. I keep looking at the table, and then I look back at her, and I look at the table again. I'm like, what do you need? And she's like, it's right there next to the cup. And I'm like, what's next to the cup?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a guy thing.
Yeah, it's definitely
both.
It's definitely all the things. Oh my gosh.
Wait, it's where are the keys? Where'd you put my keys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I make my life in the kitchen especially is all based on routine, and that wasn't an overnight thing for me because I still have parts where I fumble, but when I wake up, I have to empty the dishwasher. It's almost like it's not a compulsion.
I'm trying to train my husband to do that. I'm like, every night I remind him, like, in the morning you have to wake up and do the dishes. It is
Yes.
your chore to do it in the morning before you leave.
Yeah, so I have this pattern that I have created that used to not be there. It started out very simple with like, oh, get up, brush your teeth, which for people with ADHD, severe ADHD, know that sometimes you forget to do that. And I somehow have worked it into like, get up, brush your teeth, take a shower, get the pugs ready, because I'm a pug dad. So I'll get them ready, take them outside, feed them, empty the dishwasher, make a cup of coffee, write my list. That's my routine every single
Hey,
day.
that's a pretty good routine.
That's a good routine.
It took, well, I've had a pug now. She's going to be 8 years old. So it took 8 years to get to that point.
So a task a year. Because that was about 8 things.
Yeah, it basically turns out to be that. But I also am going to say, just because I have these things that are routine, it's not always going to happen.
I was going to say, it's not a guarantee.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel off when I don't do certain steps, and I kind of catch myself and go, what did I miss? What did I miss? And I just will go back. And sometimes I just forget and I go on throughout the day. But I'm like 80% of the time I get it.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah.
80% is good.
The only thing I would not be able to ever forget would be coffee. I would be like, oh yeah, it was coffee. Oh yeah, I have a major headache. Oh yeah, it's definitely coffee that I am missing.
Yeah, coffee is, people go, well, coffee is great. I'm like, yeah, I love it. And caffeine has no actual effect on me. That's in due part of with the ADHD. It affects your nervous system still, but it doesn't get me alert or wake me up. It just, I can have a double espresso and go right to sleep. However, if I have too much caffeine, I get a migraine. So I love how
that's fun.
My brain is wired. Once I hit a certain threshold, which I didn't understand that it was like a migraine all my life. Like I didn't understand what was bringing it on until I was like, man, I was telling people like this weird feeling and like this odd feeling behind my eye. And you're having like an ocular migraine, like you're having light sensitivity, smell sensitivity, all this stuff, and like the whole aura of a migraine. And then they gave me Excedrin, which has caffeine, and it only made it worse.
Oh no!
Oh my god!
So, but I'm always careful with my caffeine intake. But I have to have coffee in the morning because it's part of the routine.
Well, it's my kind of routine because it has coffee in it.
I feel like this is kind of just important just to mention. So, we all understand what neurodivergent means, and I think the more common term now people are using as like a friendlier or a fun way to say it is neurospicy. So just for those who don't know, can you tell us what neurodivergent is, and then what inspired you to not only write a book related to it, but start a podcast?
Yeah, I love this. It's because everyone will ask me this question because they'll see the title of the book, Tools for Navigating Neurodivergence. I'm like, yeah, I have a neurodivergent mind. They're like, that sounds like it's terminal. I feel bad for you. I'm like,
it is terminal.
It is. There's no cure. I'm sorry. But then I go,
thank you. Thank you for making me sound like I'm going to die. Awesome.
But then I tell them, I'm like, listen, it's not even a medical term. And they're like, wait, what is it? And they're like, it is the umbrella term, because there's this whole neurodiverse like range of neurological disorders, which people hate the word disorder, but that's what they are. Our brains are wired differently. They're out of order. So
out of order. I was just like thinking of like an out of order sign on a bathroom.
That's exactly
we're all just out of order, guys.
There's a little out of order sign inside of certain areas of our brain. And it could be because people always know the big ones. People know like autism, ASD, and they know ADHD, and they might know OCD. And then you start getting into all the fun ones that people are like, wait, that's in it too. I'm like, yeah, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. I hate that one. The one that I actually have a small, very small variation of is dyscalculia, which is a strange thing that I lucked out to have, where numbers don't really have meaning. I actually talked to somebody who has it severely, and numbers they're just like squiggles. For me, numbers were squiggles for me. However, through the pattern recognition superpower through ADHD, I figured out that the squiggles make other squiggles, and those squiggles have meaning as well. I was like, oh, so math was really hard growing up for me.
Oh my God, I
bet.
bet.
And it was, I mean, it's still hard, but that's why they have the internet and calculators. So it makes
Yes.
life easier. But you can go down the list. There's nearly, like, it feels like there's an infinite different types of like disorders and different neurological conditions that fall under that umbrella. So whenever somebody asks me, I'm like, it is just like this huge conglomerate of neurological disorders. That's what it is.
Mhm.
Now, what inspired me to write a book? That was a strange thing, because I think I even mentioned like the first few lines of the book, I never set out to write a book. I was, I'm
It's
a
that
photographer.
ADHD
Yeah.
popping on up again.
I'm a photographer. I do all these things. I'm creative. I like creative writing, but I don't generally write anything about myself, let alone actual, like, really personal, vulnerable things. And I had one night where I couldn't sleep. So I did what I call a brain dump, which, if anyone goes into my Google Docs, they would look and be horrified at the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of random pages with no title that are just filled with junk. Like, it could be 2 or 3 paragraphs of just like a weird thought, or it might be a few pages. But what happened that night is I had a brain dump of about 25 unspaced, unformatted pages of just, I had problems. This is what I did to solve them. This is how I got through it. And it was just going on and on all throughout, like, key points in my life. Like, well, how did I figure out how to get organized? How did I figure out how to do this? How did I get a job like in radio? How did I figure out I wanted to be a photographer? Just kept firing all these questions off. What I did, how I got through it, and how I thrived in it. And it ended up being a lot of information. And I didn't even use all of it for that book. I'm going to write more eventually, whenever I get to that. But I kept putting all this information out there. And I talked to my business coach, who was my business coach for photography. But she was an author, and she goes, wait a second, just time out. First of all, where was this? Like, this writing, like, you never talked about this. You never told me. I was like, well, because that's just something I do. And she started looking over, and she's like, you have so much information here. This is basically enough for multiple books, but just take a few pieces. And what you're going to do is you're going to tell people how you did this, like how you figured out these mental tools, these physical tools, and these social tools. And each little tool that you have underneath there, like, what 3 mental tools did you use? And for me, it was like mindfulness, meditation, breath work, things that people go, yeah, that's what everyone says. I'm like, but I did a lot of trial and error. And that's what the book is about. It's like, yeah, I couldn't figure it out. Like, I didn't learn overnight. I didn't have somebody say, learn how to meditate, and then I started meditating instantly. No, it took me years to figure out how to do it for me. And when I figured it out, that's when I realized, when I told somebody else how to do it the way I did it, there were another fellow person with ADHD. They were like, I've never tried it that way. Let me approach it like that. And then all of a sudden it started working for them. I'm like, okay, I'm on to something here. And that's where the core of the book really took off. I'm like, okay, this is how I did it. It might work for you, it might not, but this is what worked for me, and this is how I failed, and this is how I succeeded. And how it even turned into a podcast, once again, I had a podcast already. And the podcast was about passion projects, which was hilarious because I started realizing that everyone that I had talked to and interviewed, because I'm lucky. I have a lot of friends that are in different industries that have done amazing things. And I started talking to all these really creative people. I'm like, well, how did you get into filmmaking? How did you, like, my high school friend that I was in all the art classes with ended up winning an Oscar. I was like, well, how did you do that? And we're talking. My best friend who's a drummer, multiple bands, artists, other photographers. And it wasn't until I released the book that I was like, man, my podcast has been on hiatus for a little. And I started going through my guest list. I'm like, all these people have ADHD. All of them. Every single one of them. Every single one. I'm like, I know these guys do because they've told me this guy has OCD. And I'm like, what? I'm just going to rebrand this whole thing. And I did. And I was like, at the time, maybe like 25, 26 episodes in, I said, let's flip it. We're going to refocus this, and we're going to talk to people that are navigating their neurodivergence, which is always a mouthful to say for me for some reason. So that's really how it all tied together. And I started slowly, and I started asking people, I'm like, hey, are you open to talk about it? Like, because it's a lot to talk about, your struggles. And before I knew it, I had a lot of people kind of lining up and be like, yeah, I want to tell my story. And then for me, it was like, cool, I get to connect with people and I don't have to go out in public. And it makes me kind of happy.
You're like, even better.
And we have to have the same conversation with people because obviously we're asking very sensitive subjects as well. Like, hey, are you really willing to talk about this? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
The only problem is when a couple of people had said, yeah, I'm willing to talk about it. And then you ask them questions and they're like, I'm going to give you the bare bones. Absolutely nothing good. I'm just going to basically restate what you said to me. Yeah, I was emotionally abused. The end. That's when the problem comes in. Although it hasn't been that bad, but a couple of times we've had people like, yeah, I'm willing to share my story. I don't really want to share my story.
Yeah. It happens though. It really does happen. A lot of people are afraid to talk about it because once they realize, they're like, wait, I have to talk to a stranger. And I think even for me, it was strange at first to talk about it. But then I had that realization, like, I put all this in a book. And it's like, if I know some of my friends and family have read the book, and that's fine. They understand me a little better. They know what's going on. But I've had people that I don't know reach out to me and say, like, thanks, I feel seen. I'm like, great. They just read the whole thing about me not being able to do. I'm like, wow, I really don't have to worry about anything anymore when it comes to speaking now.
No,
it's out there. I mean,
yeah.
It's a good feeling.
No, that is a good feeling. That's actually something I want to do at some point. Talk about getting to things at some point.
Another podcast?
I get asked,
because if so, not me.
No, I get asked all the time, like,
you're on your own.
How I handle being a military wife and having anxiety, because like they really do not go together. And I'm like, I don't know, honestly. I just kind of do it. But one day I'll have a book to write.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I think that's something that I'm coming to grips with everything else. My next book that I have outlined, but I haven't actually started writing, and is more my personal journey of the strange world of leading up to my diagnosis, being diagnosed, being medicated, and then coming off of my medication, which I've been off of all the stimulants now for almost a year. And it's been very strange. And I don't recommend it for everyone.
Mhm.
You have to have all the tools in place to be able to handle when you have problems with like emotional dysregulation and rejection sensitive dysphoria and all these fun caveats of ADHD. Like, it's going to be a really personal like journey that I want to tell, and it's very strange, and there's a lot of like it's a lot of strange woo woo spiritual stuff, and there's a lot of real scientific stuff I go into, and it's a lot. And I'm like, I think I'm ready to actually write about it, but it is like that's like the gut check for me
Yeah.
because I can
We
feel that resistance.
we like the woo woo stuff here. We've had a tarot card reader that's given us the woo woo. Actually, a really well-known photographer. I went to high school with her, but she gave us a bunch of woo woo. So we like the woo woo here.
Yeah, basically it's no one ever really sees it because whenever they see any video for me, they always see me, and like I just have a basic blank background. But if I just took the camera and turned it to the side, all of a sudden you see like, oh, there's like an altar with all my candles and incense, and I have all this like sacred geometry stuff. I have all my tarot cards and my oracle cards and a whole bunch of stuff all over the place. Yeah, I'm deep into that. So
Well,
I love it.
when you write your second book and you want
Gotta
to talk
come on.
about the woo woo, you have to come back.
oh,
Yes.
I definitely will. I definitely will, because that's going to be a deep conversation.
Oh my god, yeah.
Those are our favorite. Uh, I think one of our like last big questions, because I know you're super like passionate about it. Not that you're not passionate about the other things you do. Are your pugs
Mhm.
and how they played a part into you becoming a published photographer?
Yeah.
Because in my mind right now, you just took really cool pictures of your pugs, and that's how it happened. But I'm sure there's way more to it than that.
Oh, funny pictures of the pugs. Also, Rihanna, I have not asked a single question. Thank you for just apparently asking all the fucking questions.
Well, it doesn't help that I can't see you, so it's making it really difficult for me to like navigate when I can't see you.
It's okay. No, I don't know what the hell happened. It wouldn't let me join with the camera at all. I even tried to join on my phone. It still wouldn't let me. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the pugs.
So that I love technology. So
Love.
yes, my pugs. Philomena is.
Oh my
it
god,
was
her name is Philomena. I love
yes.
it.
That was my first pug, and we got her when she was a puppy. It was in 2016, and I had already just started as a photographer who didn't know what he was doing.
I love it. As all photographers start.
Well, yeah, I always kind of joke about it because I tell people that I finally know what I want to be when I grow up, and it was when I was 36 I figured out I wanted to be a photographer, and I basically went ahead and did all these commercial jobs, and I was getting so frustrated that I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I know I need to do photography, but I don't like this. Like, what's going on? And when we got our puppy, she was tiny and adorable, and everyone was loving it. My wife and I were like, we love all these pug accounts. Let's create a Instagram account for this pug. We'll just put up some photos of her, and it'll be fun. And I was like, let's go for it. So it started very, very simple. Like, I would just take photos of her, literally not trying to do anything special, just taking photos of her. Like, look, she's sitting in the yard. Look, she's sitting. look, she's sleeping. Like, really, there was nothing
Yes.
to it.
Look at her toe beans.
Yeah, it's just being, okay, I have a camera and I'm taking photos of her. And what progressed really fast was how much people loved the photos I was taking of her. So her account, as a little puppy, she like all of a sudden had 100 followers, and then 400 followers, and then we hit 1,000 followers. Like, this is pretty crazy. And then she had an accident when she was 1 and left her paralyzed. And
Oh.
what's amazing about dogs in general is that they have the most nonchalant like reaction to being paralyzed, so much so that she healed from it. Mostly she has a lot of nerve damage, and we had kind of documented her recovery, going through physical therapy, and then finally finding this place, because back then we were in New Jersey, they were in like rural Pennsylvania. They were called My Pets Brace, and they could make custom like orthotic braces for pets. And people loved this journey, and people were just going crazy about it. And I remember taking photos, just continuing down this path. And I started realizing that, hey, people love these pet photos. Maybe I should try to do like pet photography. But I didn't know how to really get into that until we moved to Georgia. And we started meeting up with other pug people that knew our pug. And I think that's when the ball started rolling, to the point where I was being sought for the photos that I was doing of my pug, because I had developed a style to do. I call it the pug headshot, because I was working with pugs to photograph them as if they were people doing like professional headshots. And so they were really close up. It was really like very like a very nice portrait. And I had been selected to be the event photographer for the Vegas Pug Party, which was
That's adorable.
it was super fun. And just imagine about 120 pugs running around a casino in Las Vegas.
That's a lot of pugs.
Freaking hilarious.
Confusing the hell out of a lot of people.
Sounds like my kind of party.
So while we were in Vegas, I made sure that we took Philomena around to places that were kind of cool. And there's a place right outside of Vegas called Seven Magic Mountain. And it's just this rock formation art installation that somebody put out in the desert. And it's really cool. It's kind of like neat, and it's colorful. And we brought her out, and by now everyone, I mean, this would have been in 2019. She already had like maybe like 20, 30,000 followers. Like, she has a following. And I was like, this is going to be great. She wears a whole bunch of clothes. Let's get a really nice like tutu for her, and we'll take a photo of her out in the desert. And I took it, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be the shot. Like, I don't know, it's going to be good in the calendar. It's just one of those shots. And when I had posted it, I wasn't thinking much of it. I was like, this is a good shot. And then I had a local magazine here in Atlanta, the Atlanta Pet Life magazine, which I was like, okay, that's a thing here, which is very strange, but they have a huge, readership, like a little over 1 million people read it. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And then they were like, we want to talk to you about Philomena and your photography. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we want to focus on you. And I thought at first it was like some scam
Joke.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then they're like, okay, well, take what shots do you want to use, because we really want to use this one that you did in the desert. And I was like, well, I have like tens of thousands of shots of Philomena. So I gave them a few, and they're like, well, all right, well, we want to add a few more questions for you. We'll do a 2-page spread. And I'm like, wait, you're publishing all of my photos of my dog in your magazine? You're like, well, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what to think about this right now.
You're like, wait a minute.
And
You sure?
yeah, and from there it started to snowball. Like all of a sudden, Atlanta pug people started reaching out to me to get portraits done. You're like, oh, saw Philomena's thing, and we love Philomena. We didn't know you were local to the Atlanta area, so I'm like, oh, okay, this is, and it still doesn't make sense to me. I've been in a few different magazines. I've been on a few different online publications. I've had people from all over the world reach out to try to like book me, which I decline a lot of them because
But you said yes to us. Oh, we're special.
Well, that's because we didn't ask for Philomena. That's why.
Yeah. Well, even if you did, like,
well, Philomena wouldn't be really a great podcast guest. I'm just
she's
saying.
down there with her sister right now.
So
Look at the baby.
Yeah. So yeah, we adopted Penelope, our black pug, about
the peas.
Yeah,
two peas.
Gotta stay. Phil and Penny. Everyone knows Phil and Penny.
Which, by the by, I looked up their Instagram while you were talking. 80,000 followers. They're cooler than I am. I mean, what the hell?
Isn't that the worst when the pets are cooler than us?
I don't blame them. Who doesn't like a good animal? Come on now.
Same.
It's that is actually a very perfect like.
And they're wearing
asterisk.
curls.
Yes. Oh, of course. But I always kind of laugh is people go, how come your photography account like only has like 1,000 followers? I'm like, because I'm not my dogs.
Yeah. My dogs are cute.
Yeah.
What can I say?
It's it's one of those things that have led me to a place where I found what I love in photography, and I work with pets. It's like, that's, if I do book clients, it's generally for pet photography. But then it also freed me up to like explore avenues of photography that I really love, like long exposure, nighttime photography, stuff like that. But it's all because of Philomena that I was able to really pursue that photography like life.
Oh, look at her in a little brace in her crown.
Yes, everyone. It's you know, she's also a really big inspiration for a lot of people, which
she's so cute.
I was really surprised about that. I think that was the first time I've ever been emotionally like overwhelmed by some messages when they were watching her go through physical therapy, and people that had like almost like similar injuries or that were disabled were saying like, you know, she's giving me the courage to get up and go to physical therapy today, or to try to do something today. And I was like, well, I'm crying. This is great.
Thanks for that.
I wish Philomena could say thank you, but
yeah. Well, if I held her up to the microphone, everyone would be able to hear her because she is a very loud, snorty pug. And before we go, I could probably do that for you.
My father-in-law has one, and I always crack up because he'll come lay by me when we go over for holidays or whatever, and he sounds like a freight train when he falls asleep, just snoring like no tomorrow.
My husband and brother-in-law and mother-in-law, they all had like a pug mix. Ollie snored like a freight train.
Yeah.
Super cute.
Yeah, she's
okay. Is my father-in-law pulling my leg, or is this true or not? He says that when pugs are tired, their tails go straight. Is that true?
It depends. We call it serious tail.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
because it can be when they're tired, but also if they're really serious and they're really concentrating. Like, because if we give Philomena like a bone to chew on that she's really paying attention to, her tail will unfurl and like go straight down. And everyone's like, is she like, what's she doing? I'm like, she's concentrating. So
That's
she's like,
awesome.
she's putting every ounce of fiber of her being into chewing that
The
bone.
tail cannot be
That's
curled for this.
Yeah, so
That's
it
adorable.
uncurls when she's chewing a bone.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so my
That is.
father-in-law wasn't totally fibbing. Okay.
So, Stefan, we're going to wrap this baby up. You got anything else to impart on our lovely listeners?
You know, I always tell this to everyone. I mean, it's kind of like my motto, and it's something that I mention in my podcast, like at the end all the time. But I always want people to know that they are not alone in their struggles. If it's ADHD, if it's OCD, even if it's just like if it's just depression, what am I talking? Anything, you're not alone. Like if you just reach out to a friend, you reach out to an online group, you reach out to a community, you're going to find other people that are going through it too. And that's always like my big message for everyone is that you're not alone.
I love it.
And if you
So-
are, get a pug.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll never be
post-
alone with a pug.
And post the photos. And then
Yes.
maybe, just maybe, you'll be as famous as Philomena.
Yeah. Maybe you'll have brand deals.
I almost did that too. I almost did the same thing for my dog Flynn. And then like I was just about to finish college and I was like, I don't have time for this. So I stopped posting and I'm like, I should have fucking kept posting because he's an adorable dog, but just not as cute. He is as cute, but still.
In the last year or two, we haven't been posting as much. And we still get sponsorship deals too, just because of our followership. But there was a time where, I mean, we were working with like Starbucks and WAG and all these big companies. And
That's
actually,
so cool.
it was fun. But then I was like, I don't think this is what we want to do. So we work with like smaller mom and pop places that
Love
There
it.
you go.
like have like a product that we actually use. Like our friend who
Not just gonna sling shit that you don't like.
exactly our friend who designed a huge it's like a special feeding tray for flat-faced dogs, the Fluff Truff. Like she
Oh my
designed
god, that's adorable.
she designed it when we first met her at the first pug party, we were like, hey Deborah, this is really cool. Like, yeah. And we became friends, and I was like, yeah, we'll blow it up on social media. And here we are, all these years later. Now it's like in 140 countries, and she's like, the
That's
amount
so cool.
that she has sold is astronomical. I'm like, see,
That's amazing.
That's the important thing is we're helping people, and then they're helping others with what they do. So
That's
I
amazing.
love it. So, guys, this is how to deal when shit gets real. We'll see you all next episode.